Thanks a lot, guys. Really wonderful to be here. We're going to spend sort of the first, I think, maybe 45 minutes or so. Do you need me for something? No. Okay. We're going to spend the first 45 minutes doing things. So I just actually would really appreciate it if you could just take your bags, put it on your chairs, and push your chair in, right? And we're going to stand up for a bit. Is that all right? But I'd like you to put your bags on the chair and then push the chair in so that there's a lot of space around, right? Yeah, of course, yeah. Are we all comfortable? Yeah? Okay. So, so the topic of empathy and happiness, you'd kind of think that it should be the easiest thing for us to be able to do. But for some reason, it gets very complicated in life. In my work with kids, I've been working for over 20 odd years with kids. It's my 25th year. And much of my work has primarily been with vulnerable children. I will share my story along as I go, but for starters, the whole idea of empathy is the ability to look at the world from another person's perspective, right? So I thought we'd sort of try and do that in the most simple and the most literal of ways. So can we just all remove our shoes and keep them nicely in front of you, like just the way you would, with great respect? Yeah. Right? But keep it so that somebody can actually see it really nicely, like the way she's done it there right in front of you, so that if I walked by your shoes, I could actually see them. Yeah, or you could smell them, true. Right? And what I want you to do is, I want you to walk around the room, right? Yes. I hope so too. So I'd like you to walk barefoot across the room and just look at the different shoes that are around and try and find the shoe that is, from your point of view and the way that you look at the world, this is the most sort of, the other end of the spectrum of what is perhaps your notion of choice, your notion of awareness, something that's completely, you're like looking at it and saying, whoa, like what is that, right? So I want you to go walk around and find a shoe that makes you go like, whoa, what is that? Can you just walk around and find that? No, stand in front of it once you find your new pair of shoes. I think it's really interesting that you try and think about trying on the shoe of someone who's not your gender as well. Because that's the real piece, right? We'll have to negotiate for that at the end. It is, isn't it? So have we found our pair? Yes? Great. This way? Okay. Thank you. We still have some people roaming around. All right, could we hurry this up a bit? No, you don't necessarily have to wear it yet. Yeah? If you don't like anything, then... If you don't like anything, try and go to something that you feel like, okay, you're willing to go with this and try it out. Not your own. Yeah. Are there people still looking for something? One, it's, if it's getting crowded, you need two people because you just can't find something, then that's okay. If you really, really need to. Are you still looking? You're look. Okay. So I want you to just look at the shoe for a moment. Yeah. And just ask yourself, who do you think it belongs to? Just in your head, create your own story of who do you think the shoe belongs to? What do you believe this person is about? Right? And what do you think are their preferences, their judgments, their biases? Just in your head for a moment, just try and take a minute and a half to just ask yourself in silence, can we not talk? This is supposed to sort of be a moment of really getting into yourself and looking at how are we making a sense of the world that we encounter, right? When you're standing next to a pair of shoes that actually is a person in the invisible form, right? Do you agree with me? Yeah? So you're just wanting to try and get a sense of when you don't have a face to it, when you don't have, a body to it, even then, we're making sense of that human encounter experience there. That pair of shoes represents someone for us, right? Can you just take a moment with yourself and ask yourself, who do you think this person is? And what do you believe is their belief system? What do they care about? What is your sense of it? Right? Just take a moment and just look down. Don't look at each other, but just try and look there and try and figure it out. Okay? So now we move to the next one. We now move to that which we think is most like us. Right? So now do a walk around and find a spot with a pair of shoes that you think is most like you. Like yours. Not yours, but most like yours. Yours is same. Okay. He's not being able to find anything he likes. It's been a tough morning. That is not yours, but something that feels to you like, yeah, this feels familiar. That's cool. Something that feels familiar. Right? I'd like you to go invite the person who the shoe belongs to. So whoever, you see somebody standing near your shoe, can you just take 15 seconds to go meet that person? Wow. There's a really popular, familiar woman here. And can you ask the person, hey, excuse me, when you meet the person, can you ask them, or in 15 seconds just try and find what is it to you that's familiar about this person? The familiarity, yeah, the shoe and the person kind of somewhere intersect, right? What's familiar? Did you find the person? Yes? Yeah? Right, you have 10 seconds more to find what's familiar. You did, eh? Okay. Can we just... Hey, height helps. Hello? No, stay with the person. Don't lose your partner. We've got more stuff to do. So can anyone explain or would like to share? Must be in the loo. Can somebody share an experience of what it is about the familiarity? Yes. Hey! Thank you.
Uh, they had a support behind, so I am fond of I need safety and security, and it has bling on it, which appeals to my wild side. So, which is why these shoes meant a lot to me.
What about the person?
So the person that I met, she's right here, and she agrees that she has all these elements within her. Yes.
Okay. Great. Thanks
Yes,
so
of
much.
course.
Someone from the men, please.
Make space, guys.
Yeah, but with the mic, so do you. Okay, as far as the person is concerned, we met yesterday, so we already know that's sorted. But as far as the shoe was concerned, I saw there was a shoe that was a perfectly acceptable work shoe from Adidas, and I know that any kind of person who goes looking for work shoes at a store like that is my my kind of person, because you know, we want to exist where work is play, play is work. You know what I'm saying? Wear something every day to work that's very comfortable and that you don't have to think twice in the morning which shoe today, you know?
Okay. Thanks so much. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. The other perspective of the bling shoe. Yeah, well, we'll come back to that in a moment, yeah? Let's just do this one. Yeah. The similar one, yeah. Oh, wait. 1 second. I'm sorry, the mic's there. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. What drove me to look at each pair of shoes is with something that I would wear also. I like the square toes, not the pointed toes, so for comfort. And as I stood here, Abhijit came and I said, it has to be Abhijit. And so we have a lot of things in common. Can I say that? Huh? Okay. I noticed that he doesn't untie his laces, just pulls his shoes out just like I do. So we are people who are very practical, and he agreed with that. We are both very active. We got a lot of work to do. We both love education, and many things in common that we do have. So it's nice meeting Abhijit.
Okay. Thank you so much. Akanksha, you have a strong voice. You can speak. Yeah.
And interestingly enough, we both concur on the fact that we like simple, functional things, but they're also pretty looking. So they are flat chappals, but they work for every day, every purpose. I can wear them anywhere. And when I came back and spoke to the person who picked my shoes. She said exactly the same thing about me and said what struck her was the simplicity.
Yeah.
And
White color. Like I thought she's very simple and she's simple even high thinking like person.
Okay.
so I could connect it back.
Thank you. And ma'am, yeah.
I can show you the pair of the, the chappal I can definitely. This the one. And of course I thought of a young girl.
Yeah.
Neha, where are you, young girl? Ah, there. And I thought I thought she's definitely wearing pink today, so dominant. Somewhere in her dress. You have the piping of the dupatta, please. Then, very practical because all colors, one jutti with all outfits. Atrak! No, comfortable
Yeah.
and practical and of course, I don't know, I thought, will be colorful personality.
Okay.
But that probably she wants to at this age keep it a secret.
Okay.
So otherwise, and cheerful because of again the color and
Now that
brings
you
a
know
little-
who she is, do you have a sense of anything familiar?
quite a bit because in the sense that the young girl, so that and as I said, some color somewhere and
Okay.
she got a lovely smile as I can see, so probably bringing a lot of cheer.
Great.
And especially if she's handling children, then I'm sure they love her because
Thank you.
she's got all the colors of
Yeah.
life with her.
Thanks. And
Everybody
the last
saying,
one.
pack and take it. They're telling me to pack it and take it. As nobody is claiming that. Thank you.
Yeah.
The pair of chappals which I liked is of Swati. This is how it is. It's of Hush Puppies. I like this because of the comfort, simplicity, functional, and it will let me do the work which I want. It will not hinder my speed. It is good for the health and knees as you are aging. So all those points I saw. So everybody is aging. Everybody
hear you.
age. So 40s. So it's okay, but then it's a reality.
Great.
Yes. So all the experience what she has got. So I
That's
thought
wonderful.
it was, and as a person also, I think there's a comfort, functionality, simplicity, and okay, the execution of the work has to be flawless. It should not, some way stop her just because she's wearing high heel or something. So it is those all angles I saw, and I spoke to her and realized that she is with Podar and already in a leadership positions.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the next bit. So what are you hearing in all of this that's common to you that strikes a chord? In the different people sharing their experiences, what do you think is a common chord to the experience? In a word. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, what I heard is that the bling was beautiful, the plain was beautiful, and the colorful one was beautiful. The white was beautiful. I think it's the meaning that you
You
gives
ascribe to it, right? Yeah,
I mean, I
great.
don't know if it's empathy is also about that. It's what you associate
Yeah.
and the meaning that you give. Because
Exactly.
it's 4 different kinds, and all of them gave a beautiful interpretation to how beautiful that is.
Thank you. Yes. Anyone else?
How similar we are. We both got these fringes and we both tried to tie our hair. And she's wearing a black top, I'm wearing a black kurta. She's wearing red pants, I'm wearing pink pants. So it's really, really uncanny. But yeah, I'm really excited. I'm going to touch base with her later.
Thank you. So the point is that you're finding connections in places historically that you may not have looked at, right? And when you start seeing things from a different place, you can still find connections, right? And a lot of empathy is about how you give meaning to an experience, right? And understanding that once something draws you and pulls you, it also invites you to act in towards it, Does that make sense? That you saw the pair of shoes, for whatever reason, that was the one that invited you to want to explore further, right? And as you go on and you explore further, the world then suddenly opens up into a nature of an experience that is completely different. Invariably, most of the times more expanding. One does not say that expansion is a painless process. As we all know, expansion can also sometimes be really painful. However, it is an encounter into the unknown that opens you and widens you more into the experience of vulnerability, which is what we heard this morning, right? That when you finally do encounter the person and you actually see each other and you can sense the familiar, at one level there is a tremendous level of joy. At the other level there is also a soft sense of vulnerability, because you suddenly understand that. Why do you think you feel vulnerable? Suddenly you're open and naked, right? Open and naked is good, yeah? But for some reason, there's a lot of socializing that says open and naked is not appropriate, right? So we want to take this conversation to the one next level. So the first part of empathy that I want you to understand through this experience, we're just sort of trying to do little bits to try and, sort of string together a series of insights. So the first one that we're trying to look at, which is what we were trying to do, is to be able to understand that empathy does have an emotional tug point to it, right? It's just like when you play tug of war, right? There is a certain part within you that does experience something, right? So now with this partner with whom you found some nature of resonance, what we're going to take the next sort of 1.5 minutes to do, and I'd really appreciate sort of pin drop silence on this because it's a sort of a quiet visualization piece, is that one person amongst you is going to close their eyes, right? So say for instance we're a pair. So he's going to close his eyes and I'm going to take my hand here. Can you turn your back? Because I need to demonstrate. Thank you. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to take my hand, put it right in the center of his back, and just very gently do this. Right? You do this all the time in your life with people you care about. Right? And the person who has their eyes closed just has to experience this feeling inside. Right? That of just being XYZ. Whatever this is, we'll talk about what is this afterwards, right? But so we're going to just take sort of 45 seconds or a minute each to be able to do this, right? What I want you to do when your eyes are shut is just stay centered here, right? If you can't see me, here, okay? So when somebody's sort of going down on your back like this, I just want you to stay centered here and just experience it, okay? And then we'll talk about what that is. Is that okay? Cool. So can we sort of, you can sit down on a chair. I think that'd be much more comfortable. Hey, thank you. If you're more comfortable on a chair, do that. Yeah, standing is fine. Choose whatever's comfortable.
Let's move on.
Relax, stay open. Gently, right? Okay. All right. So can we begin? If one person can close their eyes, If there's anybody here who's really uncomfortable with this idea, feel free to opt out. This is not a compulsory exercise. If you're really, really uncomfortable, it's all right. Yeah? But for those of you who are open to exploring, just one person close your eyes and just very, very gently right? You can now gently open your eyes and we can shift, right? So those who had their eyes closed can now keep them open and exchange program, yeah. This is the exchange program. So can you close your eyes? Yeah, sure. Begin. So you can now slowly open your eyes. Thank you very much. I want you to remember that feeling, guys. So I want you to just simply remember that feeling. And now, here's the question that you're going to actually explore, right? We want you to sit with the same person again. And the question that is the following, that you just sort of both put your hands out, take a moment to look at your hands, and ask yourself the question that when in your life, have your hands acted out in the world to create that nature of an emotion, right, in the real world? When somebody was doing this to you in your back, you felt something here, right? Everybody with me? Yeah? Okay. You felt that. In your life, you must have acted out in ways using these as your instruments of action, your hands, to actually have created that experience too, right? For someone, for maybe a group of people, for a whole institution. It could be wherever it is in your life, at whatever point in time it is in your life. But to be able to connect that emotion to the capacity of your hands to actually create that in the world, right? Can you take a moment to share that story with each other? Is everybody clear with the question? Yeah. So you did this, right? There was a feeling here. We're now trying to connect the feeling to action, right? So we're saying that there was something here that you felt. It may be named, it may be unnamed. You may have a whole number of names to experience this, right? To this experience. Whereas saying that that experience that you had is not just something inside of you, right? You have also created that somewhere in your life, right? And you have done that using your entire body, your mind, your will, and in this moment, we're just using the hands as the metaphor for that. And we're saying that what have you done in your life? Who have you touched? What have you transformed? That you can actually say that what you experienced here, and if you were to experience the energy of that which you created, those would actually feel familiar. They'd almost be sort of resonant to each other. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. You have like 2.5 minutes to do that. So take a minute, 15 seconds each, yeah? It's a rich conversation, so I'm really sorry to interrupt. But has everybody had the opportunity to share? Yes? Yeah, okay. Just in a word, right? What did you find common or interesting in the experience that was shared that you kind of heard and said, oh, I get that? What was it that you heard in the story that was shared that you had immediate sort of, yeah, I get that? Yes. Touch heals. Okay. Yes. That's awesome. Nice. Okay. What else? Same there, yeah? Yes. Wanting to protect and care for. Yeah? Assurance. Uh-huh. Right. Great. Yes. Yeah.
Also the experience of caring for someone is just usually said at home when I'm not nurturing.
Yeah.
You know, what are the opportunities that are available and when those are available, can we talk about them or do we say, oh, you know, I will do it but not talk about it, it's not my thing.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else who would like to share? Yeah, ma'am. Just, okay. Uh-huh.
So, for example, you tell children about good touch and bad touch. You tell born teachers, especially male teachers with female children, never, ever, ever, ever touch.
Right.
There's a distance between people because if there are two females and you're worried about, you know, how touch will be seen by other people.
Right.
So there is, in society today, I think we've lost that. We used to touch a lot more as children.
Right.
And I think children
Do today. Right.
There's that social taboo with touch. Because touch heals and consoles and protects and all of that.
Yeah.
We agree. I think we are losing it somewhere.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. No. Yeah.
So when my partner was seated and I was touching and said, let me put more of myself into this and how very that. I can imagine this is my 10-month-old daughter Zara. And I touched her as if she was Zara and I was reassuring her. And the moment the exercise ended, my partner didn't even know I was married. She turned me behind and said, you're going to be a bottle. I asked me because she felt it. So, thank you.
You wanted to share, right? Yeah.
So actually it's something similar.
I'll get to you.
It's something similar to what she said over here, something about touch being taboo. Because so I come from Delhi and where, you know, just traveling in, anyone who comes from Delhi knows traveling in public transport is a nightmare. So I've been conditioned to not be comfortable with touch and especially like a stranger's touch. So when I was patting her, you know, that's how it started. I wasn't comfortable with it, but eventually, while I was going through, you know, through the process, you know, suddenly I felt like a little protective about her, and you know, like she's a child, and you know, so that feeling, that emotion sort of transformed during that action. It was quite interesting.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
About the importance of presence.
Uh-huh.
Talking about empathy.
Right.
And I don't need it. And to empathize with someone, you can use words, but if you're present and if you feel their pain, and if you're able to make them feel that you feel their pain, then they're no longer alone. And there's a connection. And I think for me that's central to empathy. So it's very much about the state of mind and the intention and the ability of the empathizer to be present.
Right. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So we spoke about the flow of energy that happens from one person to another through touch. And it can be any kind of energy.
Right.
So when done in a calming manner, like it was done today, it was extremely calming and relaxing for all of us. We use the same energy when we touch to bring in positivity, to appreciate, and so many more things, and also calm if someone is agitated.
Right.
Yes, so it's all about, like he mentioned, what the empathizer is feeling and what are you passing through as energy.
So I just wanted to share with you that where this came from was actually from the work that I've been doing with kids for many years. So when was working with runaway kids on the streets, we had for those of you who remember the bomb blasts of Bombay from the early 90s, and much more the riots that happened in 92, yeah? One of the things that went around the city with a lot of us who were working with kids in the streets then was that many of the people who actually landed up when all of this thing went awry to help were actually all of the guys living on the streets, especially the kids. And they just ran into it to help without thinking twice. Their just whole thing was about saying that, you know, that person is in pain and I just have to show up to help, right? And so in the work that we were doing, and we were trying to explore how do you get past pain and anguish in life, kids talked a lot about wanting to reach out to be able to help someone feel better, yeah? And so when they kept talking about it and talked about their acts of how they did this or how they do this in their lives, we said, well, what does that actually feel like? Where does the idea that you want to reach out to actually come from, right? And what does it feel, do you think, for someone else? And that's when they said, you know, in the effort of trying to explain themselves, they said, this is what it feels like, right? And this is from where we started doing these exercises with kids, because we realized that what they were offering was a language and a way to communicate that which they feel, but they don't have words to express, right? And for them, this space is an infinite space within yourself, right? That from here, your capacity to actually connect to known and unknown is equal. And I think this is what's really, really important, is that we spend a lifetime in searching for people who we are connected to in a known way, right? But for them, the most important idea was that you could connect to those who are completely different from you, from exact part of it. That you give equally not only to the known, but also to the unknown, right? And you do this from a sense of making your own personal judgment of when is the right time to give unconditionally from that space. What does all of this have to do with empathy? What it has to do with empathy is that it helps you connect the dots to understand that as a young person, if you're looking at the world from the point of view of a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old, they are very, very fundamentally linked to this place within them. What they are not being offered the opportunity to do is to actually live out of this place, right? Very often times when we're talking about empathy, people talk about teaching kids empathy. They don't need to be taught. It is their natural state of being. The question here is that there is a social system or a construct within which they are finding themselves that's actually not allowing them to show up in an empathetic way, right? And one of the greatest challenges of the social construct, whatever that might be, you may call it rules in one context, you may call it belief systems in another context, you may call it social, cultural norms in a third context, right? However it is showing up in the life of a young person, the one thing that it is giving him the signal about is that the moment you cannot transact an empathy, it then gives you the message that I am different and I don't need to bother, right? It's not his or her natural choice. That is not the message that he or she was searching for. But when you get pushback, what do all people do when they get pushback? What do you do when you get pushback? You retaliate. But then what do you tell yourself? Like, how much are you going to push again? Not much. Exactly. Very nice. I love the way Willie said that, not much. You know, you could in him see a 14-year-old, you can see a 10-year-old, you can see a 16-year-old say that, right? So when you're hearing kids sort of look at situations and spaces where they are saying that they are disengaging from it, what you need to be able to understand is that they've had experiences in their life that have created these cushions around them that have told them that you need to live in this buffer zone because vulnerability isn't a cool spot, right? And so a huge part of empathy is also the ability to allow vulnerability to exist, to help young people understand that vulnerability is existence, right? That the effort to control or to feel that you are completely in control of what's going on around you is actually quite mythical because it doesn't exist. But if you can actually show up and be open and in that moment be sort of feel like, whoa, I don't know where this is going to go, right? Then how do you start to learn to recognize that you don't need to be afraid in saying, I don't know where this is going to go? Because much of the world is like that. You don't know where the world's going to go. So you got to be able to live in a world that you don't know where it's going to go by saying, hey, I'm here. I'm available, right? And so at the heart of empathy is this need for connection, because that's how you learn that you're connected. And our own sense of our humanity is expressed through that, right? The ability to connect to you and recognize that you may just be a man, but there is something in you that is like me, even though my shoes and yours don't match. Does that make sense? Right? That's the heart of the learning encounter that we have to invite ourselves into the classroom with. So I think you had a question, the first one, that what can we invite into the classroom beyond academics? What we can invite into the classroom beyond academics is the experience of the other that exists amongst us, right? India is this kind of a country where if you just looked at a classroom of 60 kids, you would find the whole country in a microcosm. You don't need to learn history, you don't need to learn geography, you don't need to learn nothing. If you just understood every kid who came into your class, and I'm not saying you as a teacher, I'm saying I as a student in a class of 40, 50 kids, if I understood who these children are, where they come from, what are the cultures and the social mores that they come from, I will get an understanding of this nation that I belong to and this diversity that I am a part of, right? But how much of our times is spent in actually exploring that diversity, right? Within the very class that we have in our classrooms are children who have experienced, separation because of their caste. There are, within the very classrooms that we inhabit, there are children whose families have experienced some nature of atrocity or the other. They are growing up with these stories. They are growing up with these emotions surrounded in their beings. But there is no space in their life where they are able to show up with it and say, this is who I am. And if you spend 12 years in a school or 10 years in a school and you've never ever had the opportunity to share and be present with someone in the wholeness of who you are, in the totality from where you come, then who have you actually really encountered? Yes.
I may be wrong, but I would like to interview you.
Yeah, sure.
There's a sense of pathos, and there's a sense of pathos, or there's a sense of concern that is built around empathy.
Yeah.
Which I can relate to, which is, in our immediate circumstances, that might be the case. But I wish to bring two examples.
Yeah.
One from Japan and another from Singapore. The teenagers in Japan and Singapore, all the influences there, the stakeholders there, also concerned with a point, lack of empathy. And the reason why, of course there are several reasons,
Yeah.
but a single greatest common reason which has been observed in Japan and Singapore is that for a very long time, they have not seen strife.
Yeah.
So it's not necessary that a negativity or a atrocity or a pushback
Yeah.
is all that would makes somebody disconnect from their inherent ability to empathize, even sustained comfort
Absolutely.
may not even allow people to engage.
Yeah. So that is very, very true. Yeah. And so the idea is not to say that anguish is the basis of empathy, right? The idea is to help people understand simply that the idea of empathy is a huge part of how people develop identity, right? In our work with kids that we've done over the years, the singular takeaway that we've had is that from this space that you touched today within yourself, is the infinite possibility to act in the world in service of a larger common good, in service of a larger good to yourself, right? In service of a larger good to the other, right? And that this capacity and this ability is almost infinite and it is generative. So it's nothing that you have to really fear, that if you give from here, then you know the bank account's going to get empty. And so for kids, if they realize that there is this capacity inside of them to be able to give in different ways, in different contexts, from a bank that is actually infinite, it fundamentally alters their fundamental identity about themselves. Because as a young person, you very often struggle with the voices of criticism, of fear, of, your friends saying things about you, your own views of what is sad and difficult for yourself. And so all of these negative voices inside of you are always playing their little drama inside, right? It's just like in that film with the little cartoon characters, right? And so if you have the ability to access this point inside of yourself, then immediately you have the ability to redefine who you are fundamentally. That you know that you need not be only defined by your negative voices, that there is some part of you that is grander, that has a capacity for more power and expression in this world, and that if you give way to it, then it's actually going to help you create a much more connected reality for yourself, right? So the point of working around ideas of a culture of empathy in a school system is really to invite the entire school as a system to create a culture in which kids are able to look at the best of who they could be, right? On a continuous, iterative, daily landscape. So in an Indian school, for instance, we all go to school every day and you go to assembly, right? It's a part of the culture of the school. In some schools, at 11:15 during the break, you might have a certain other habit, which is something that you do all the time. And so as you build habits, cultures get formed, right? Do you agree with me? So our real question for today is, what are those habits in our schools that we can actually create, by which kids come to school every day discovering the possibility of who and what is infinite in themselves, right? And can they do this regularly on a daily basis so that they are continuously reminding themselves of it? Because a huge part of identity development is to be able to understand that you can be self-generative and self-reliant, right? Emotional self-reliance is really about being able to discover for yourself that you can actually take care of yourself, right? And so a lot of what Ronan talked about the idea of modeling, right? Modeling comes from the opportunity to actually have the opportunity to create a habit for yourself, right? So how do we create those opportunities? So as a way to just sort of close the dialogue, because we're running sort of over time on things, I want to be able to give all of you at your table about 10, 15 minutes, say 12 minutes, to just come up with 3 ideas that you think that you could actually instill in a school culture where kids can be reminded of the infinite possibility of this inside of them in different ways. You could either do it as a whole school system, or you can actually do it in your classroom, right? But I'd really appreciate it if every table came up with at least 3 so that you could actually go back and try and experiment with this. And, perhaps because you're all interconnected over the internet, then you can even share your experiences of what it's like to actually try these out in your class. Is that all right? Yeah? So 3, if you're feeling generous, 5, 6 is also good. But try and come up with stuff that you're willing to commit to, right? So if you think that something's a good idea, but it's too difficult to pull off, then try not to choose that. Come up with 3 that, people can have the ability to actually work with. I'm very conscious that we got to move forward with the day, and so our suggestion is that all of the tables worked on ideas for how you can build do small things to build a culture of empathy in school. What we're going to do is, Akanksha had spoken with you this morning that there is a Twitter feed that's going around. So Karishma is going to write up all of these ideas as part of the Twitter feed so that it's available to all of you, right? So please make sure that you're able to access the Twitter piece so that you're able to get this. And we're inviting you to actually stay in conversation with us on this. So when you go back to school, could you please experiment and try any of these ideas and write back to us so that we can then start looking at collectively as a community what are our needs for creating cultures of empathy in our schools. Because a lot of people came up and talked about could we have tools to do this, to set cultures in our context? Are there different kinds of exercises that we could do? How do we really create habits and cultures? So it's a larger conversation which, today would not be the right time to begin getting involved in it too deep. So our thought was to invite you to experiment, get in touch, share your experiences, and let's take the conversation forward from there. Does that work for everyone? Yeah? Cool? Okay. I want to really, really deeply thank all of you for participating. Over lunch, I got to meet many of you, and thank you so much for coming to that opportunity with an open heart, yeah? And Ronan's going to take it on forward from here. Okay?